There is a special silence only grandparents know. It is the silence of those who have weathered storms, lost battles, won many others, and finally reached the safe harbor of wisdom earned through time. When a child with autism or ADHD is in crisis, when parents are at their breaking point, when the home feels like an emotional battlefield, where is calm found? It rests in the wrinkled hands that have cradled generations. It shines in the serene gaze of those who have learned that time not only heals, but also teaches. It echoes in the steady voice of those who no longer need to prove anything to the world, only to be a refuge. At 60 years old, Marcus Aurelius wrote his Meditations not as an emperor, but as a grandfather to humanity. He knew that true power is not in domination, but in receiving with serenity whatever destiny brings. And what destiny has brought you, grandparents, is a sacred mission, to be the unshakable pillar when everything around is trembling. But here is the piercing question. Are you ready to be that pillar? Or are you still trapped by the fears, judgments, and expectations you have carried for decades? A neurodivergent child does not need another anxious adult. They need someone who has made peace with life, who understands that differences are not flaws, but precious variations of human existence. They need grandparents who see autism or ADHD not as tragedy, but as a different path up the same mountain. Jung said, "A life truly lived is a life of constant change." You, grandparents, are living proof of this. You have seen the world transform. You have seen children grow. You have seen pain turn into wisdom. Now, this experience is the most valuable gift you can offer your neurodivergent grandchildren. This message is not about helping neurodivergent children. It is about how you, grandparents, can become true Stoic sages in the home, not offering pity, not overprotection, but authentic presence and unconditional love. Seneca said, "Life is long enough if you know how to use it." You have already used decades to arrive here. Now it is time to use that wealth of years to create a sanctuary of calm where grandchildren can flourish exactly as they are. Prepare yourselves for a journey through time, tradition, and love that transcends generations. For being a grandparent of a neurodivergent child is not merely a family role, it is a spiritual vocation. When was the last time you felt truly at peace with the life you've lived? What stories from your journey could become medicine for a child who feels different? If this message has reached you, share in the comments. What memory from your childhood would you like to pass on to your grandchildren? Subscribe to the channel for more reflections on Stoicism and neurodivergence, and share this video with other grandparents who need this message. The Fortress of Time. Why grandparents are different from parents. Imagine two people watching the same storm. One stands in the middle of it, soaked, desperate, trying to control the lightning and stop the rain. The other stands in a high tower, calm, watching as the storm has already begun to pass beyond the mountain. That is the fundamental difference between parents and grandparents when facing autism and ADHD. Parents live in the urgency of the diagnosis, under the pressure of therapies, in the desperation to fix what they believe is broken. You, grandparents, have something that only time can give, something that cannot be bought, the perspective of eternity. You have seen that life unfolds in seasons, that crises pass, that true love remains. Epictetus, once a slave before becoming a philosopher, taught, "It is not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them." Nasi, when an autistic grandchild has a meltdown, parents see catastrophe. You, Stoic grandparents, can see a child trying to communicate in the only way they know how. That difference in perspective is not coldness, it is hard-won wisdom. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Human life is brief, but to live well is long enough." You have lived long enough to know that happiness does not come from perfection, but from deep acceptance. A child with ADHD who cannot sit still in school is not a problem to be solved. They are energy that needs channels, like a river that needs banks, not dams. Jung spoke of the archetype of the wise elder, the one who has integrated their shadows, who no longer needs to fight life but can flow with it. You, grandparents, are this living archetype for your neurodivergent grandchildren. When a child feels they do not fit into the world, you can be the world in which they always belonged. But here lies the crucial point. This serenity cannot be faked. If you still carry shame about the diagnosis, if you still secretly dream your grandchild will outgrow their different neurology and become like others, that energy will be felt by the child. Neurodivergence has a special antenna for authenticity. You cannot lie to an autistic child about how you truly feel. Buddhism teaches that suffering comes from resistance to what is. Parents, out of love, resist the autism and ADHD of their children. They want treatment, cure, conformity. You, grandparents, can offer something infinitely more powerful: complete acceptance. Not the resigned acceptance of giving up, but the victorious acceptance of realizing that different ways of being human are all sacred. Seneca said, "Every new beginning comes from the end of another beginning." Tate, for you, grandparents, the arrival of a neurodivergent grandchild may be the end of conventional dreams and the beginning of a far deeper adventure. To love without conditions, to teach without expectations, to be present without haste. The difference in daily life is revolutionary. When an autistic grandchild does not want to hug, parents despair, seeing a lack of affection. You can understand that love is expressed in countless ways. When a grandchild with ADHD forgets things for the 10th time, parents see irresponsibility. You can see a mind working in layers, like a computer with its own operating system. You are the fortress built by time, not the fortress that excludes, but the one that protects and welcomes. Within you, there is no longer the rush to prove anything, to fix anyone, to meet social expectations. There is only the treasure of a life lived and the generosity to share it without judgment. Jung said, "He who looks outside dreams. He who looks inside awakens." You have looked inside long enough to know that the true battle is not to change the children, it is to change yourselves. And when you become this serene fortress, your neurodivergent grandchildren finally find a place where they can simply be. The mirror of memory, transforming pain into wisdom. Have you ever wondered why you keep certain memories while others fade? There is a deep reason for this. The memories that remain, especially the painful ones, are not accidents of the past. They are seeds of wisdom that time planted in you so that decades later they could become medicine for others. When an autistic grandchild feels isolated and misunderstood, you do not need to pretend you understand. You can share the real isolation you once lived. Seneca wrote a devastating truth: every man has a bad day. Some have a bad life, but few turn the bad into wisdom. You, grandparents, are among those few. You did not reach 60, 70, 80 years because life was easy. You arrived here because you learned to transform wounds into strength. And that is exactly what a neurodivergent grandchild needs to see. That pain is not the end of the story. It is the middle of it. Imagine telling an autistic grandchild about the time you were rejected at school, humiliated for being different, or unable to fit in. Not as a cheap moral lesson, "I went through it and survived," but as a real bridge between two souls who know the bitter taste of not belonging. Jung spoke of the shadow, those parts of ourselves we hide because they are too painful. You carry shadows decades old, moments of failure, rejection, inadequacy. But here is the miracle. When you integrate these shadows and share them with love, they become light for others. A grandmother sharing the depression she faced at 40, how she felt broken and strange, is not traumatizing a grandchild with ADHD. She is showing that broken does not mean lost. She is teaching that feeling different is a legitimate human experience, not a personal flaw. Buddhism teaches pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. You have already learned the difference. The pain of diagnosis, the pain of prejudice, the pain of watching a grandchild struggle, that is inevitable. But the suffering of believing that pain is unjust, wrong, or meaningless, that you can choose to abandon. Marcus Aurelius lost several children. He could have become bitter, angry at the gods. Instead, he wrote, "Accept the things you cannot change and find the courage to change the things you can." You cannot change the autism or ADHD of your grandchildren, but you can change how that experience is remembered by the child. Here lies the hidden power of shared memory. When you tell your own struggles with authenticity, you are giving the child permission to feel without shame. You are saying, it is natural to struggle. It is natural to feel different. Look, I felt the same way, and see where I am now. Not cured, but whole. Jung said, what is not brought to consciousness comes back as fate. If you have not integrated your own wounds, you will try to save your grandchildren from them. And that is impossible and destructive. But if you have made peace with your pain, you can accompany your grandchildren's pain without despair. The difference is profound. Parents feel the need to fix because they are still in the middle of the storm. You can simply bear witness because you have learned that storms pass. Imagine a grandfather telling his autistic grandchild about the time he was unjustly fired, how he felt like a failure, how he sank into months of depression, and then telling how he discovered his true strength was not in never falling, but in always rising again. That the rejection of others does not define our worth, that being different often means being rare and valuable. This is the mirror of memory, reflecting not what the child should be, but what they already are, a valuable human being navigating unique challenges, just as you once navigated yours. Seneca said, "Each new day is a blank page. What we write on it is our choice." You have written pages of pain, but also pages of resilience. Now you can help your grandchildren write theirs, not with fear of what is to come, but with hope rooted in what has already been overcome. The calm that teaches, presence versus hurry in neurodivergence. When an autistic child is in crisis, the whole world seems to speed up. Parents rush to soothe, teachers push to stop, neighbors judge to control. Everyone is in a hurry to fix, to normalize, to make the storm pass. But there is someone in the family who has learned a fundamental truth. Sometimes the best action is not to act. Sometimes hurry is the poison that spoiled the remedy. You grandparents carry a treasure money can't buy, the rhythm of serenity. It isn't laziness, resignation, or conformity. It is the deep wisdom of those who have seen thousands of storms and know that all of them pass, but some must be respected to the end. Epictetus, who lived first in chains and then in freedom, taught the crucial difference between what we control and what we don't. An autistic crisis is not under our control. Parents' urgency to interrupt it is not under our control. Other people's judgments are not under our control, but our calm presence during the crisis, that is, our absolute power. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." When a grandchild with ADHD can't focus, repeats the same question dozens of times, seems to not listen, parents' minds despair. Your Stoic minds can simply remain present. There is a vast difference between being present and being anxious. Anxiety lives in the future, imagining catastrophes. Presence lives here and now, with what is actually happening. A neurodivergent child in crisis does not need more anxiety in the room. They need someone who is not afraid of them. Jung spoke of holding space, holding the emotional field for another. Through life experience, you have developed a natural capacity to hold space. When you held a sick child through the night, walked alongside grief, or endured financial or marital crises, you learned to be present with suffering without being consumed by it. This is pure medicine for a neurodivergent child. Imagine, in the middle of an autistic crisis, while everyone is agitated, there is one person in the room who is not afraid, who is not trying to fix, not desperate, not judging, simply present, an anchor in the storm. Buddhism teaches mindfulness, the art of being fully present, but you didn't need courses or techniques. You learned mindfulness in the deepest way, through accepted suffering and a life fully lived. When an autistic grandchild bangs their head against the wall, you can remain calm, not because you don't care, but because you know this crisis will also pass. Here is the practical difference. Parents look at a crisis and see a problem to be solved urgently. You can look at the same crisis and see a child expressing themselves in the only way they can at that moment. Parents ask, how do we stop this quickly? You can ask, what is this child trying to tell me? Seneca taught, all men are hurried in living, but slow in being alive. Parents rush to normalize neurodivergent children. You can teach the art of being alive with differences, breathing together, finding peace even in the middle of chaos. Hurry is the language of fear. When we rush to fix an autistic crisis, we are telling the child, how you are right now is unbearable. Calm presence is the language of love. When we remain serene through the storm, we are saying, you are loved in all your states. A child with ADHD who can't sit still needs movement, not emotional sedatives. An autistic child who has a meltdown needs expression, not silencing. You, grandparents, can offer something revolutionary. Space to be without hurry to change. Jung said that the greatest and most important problems of life are fundamentally insoluble, but that doesn't mean we cannot live with them. Autism and ADHD are not puzzles to be solved, and that is a liberation, not a tragedy. It frees you from the pressure to fix and allows you simply to love. The calm you offer teaches more than any therapy. It teaches that peace is possible even when everything around is agitated. It teaches that true love is never in a hurry. It teaches that presence is the most powerful gift we can give anyone. Roots and branches. Traditions that include, not exclude. There is a question that haunts many families with neurodivergent children. How do we keep our traditions when our child can't participate the way they should? The Stoic answer is revolutionary. You do not change the traditions. You discover that true traditions were inclusive from the beginning. The problem was never the family's roots. The problem was the artificial branches that grew around those roots, building barriers where there should have been bridges. Marcus Aurelius, emperor of Rome, lived amid rigid imperial tradition and inflexible social protocols. Even so, he wrote, we are all leaves of the same tree, part of the same universe. He understood that true traditions do not exclude, they connect. They don't create castes, they create family. You, grandparents, are the guardians of the family's roots. But here is the crucial point. You also have the power to decide which branches to prune and which to let grow. A tradition that doesn't include an autistic grandchild is not a tradition. It is a barrier disguised as love. Seneca said, no wind is favorable to one who does not know where he is going. Many families don't know what they want from their traditions. Do they want to keep up appearances, create memories, pass on values? When you define the true purpose, adaptations become natural. Jung spoke of archetypal symbols, images and rituals that connect generations across time. Christmas is not archetypal because of the perfect table or the children's impeccable behavior. It is archetypal because it represents union, generosity, light in the darkness. An autistic grandchild who can't sit at a formal table can still participate in those symbols in other ways. Here is practical wisdom. Instead of forcing a child with ADHD to stay still during the family prayer, create a walking prayer in the yard. Instead of demanding eye contact from an autistic child during important conversations, allow them to draw while they listen. The roots remain, only the branches adapt. Epictetus taught that we don't control what happens to us, but we control how we respond. You do not control having a neurodivergent grandchild, but you control completely how your family traditions will respond to that reality. Will they become more rigid and exclusionary, or more flexible and loving? Buddhism teaches beginner's mind, staying open to the new. You have decades of established traditions, yet you can approach each family celebration with beginner's mind when a neurodivergent child is present. What truly matters here? How can we include everyone without diminishing anyone? Jung said that family is the child's first universe. For a neurodivergent child, Being excluded from family traditions is being excluded from the universe itself. But when you adapt traditions to include them, you teach that the universe is big enough for everyone. Imagine the power of an autistic child who grows up knowing their family created special traditions with them in mind. That their unique way of being wasn't merely tolerated, but celebrated through family rituals. That they are not a problem the family must work around. They are a person for whom the family lovingly transforms. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What is not good for the hive cannot be good for the bee." If a family tradition is not good for the neurodivergent grandchild, it is not good for the family. Traditions that exclude any member weaken the whole. But here is the most beautiful discovery. When you adapt traditions to include neurodivergence, they become richer, not poorer. A birthday party with low music and soft lights to honor autistic sensitivities becomes more welcoming for everyone. A family lunch where it's okay to get up from the table becomes more relaxing for all. Seneca taught, "Every new beginning comes from the end of another beginning." Perhaps it is time to end traditions built on performance and begin traditions built on authentic presence. To end rituals that demanded perfection and begin rituals that celebrate our shared humanity. You, grandparents, have a historic opportunity to be the generation that healed family traditions, that took ancestral symbols of love and union and freed them from the prison of social protocol, that grew roots so strong and deep that any kind of branch can safely flourish. True family traditions are not rigid. They are resilient. They do not exclude differences. They incorporate them. And when you do this consciously, you are creating a legacy of inclusion that will last far beyond your lifetime. The garden of difference. Cultivating unique flowers. Have you noticed how nature never apologizes for its differences? A rose does not feel ashamed for not being a sunflower. An oak does not try to imitate bamboo. The orchid does not apologize for needing special care that other flowers don't. Nature celebrates diversity as a fundamental law of existence. And you, grandparents, can be the gardeners who teach this to neurodivergent grandchildren. Observing nature, Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Consider that everything is opinion. See things as they truly are. And how are things truly?" An autistic child is not a broken child. They are an orchid trying to grow in sunflower soil. A child with ADHD is not too hyperactive. They are a river trying to flow through channels that are far too narrow. The problem was never the child. The problem was trying to cultivate unique flowers with standardized methods. You, grandparents, have learned something younger parents are still discovering. Each person has their own season to bloom. You have seen children who were difficult become brilliant adults, and perfect children struggle later in life. You understand that success does not come from uniformity. It comes from authenticity. Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming who we truly are, not who others expect us to be. For a neurodivergent child, individuation is often harder because the world keeps telling them their natural way of being is wrong. You can be the gardeners who protect this process. Seneca taught, "Each person is born for something specific. Our task is to discover what it is." A dudin, an autistic child who can't make eye contact but sees patterns no one else can. What is there? Something specific. A child with ADHD who can't sit still but has inexhaustible creative energy. What is their unique purpose? This is where you, grandparents, have an advantage over parents. You are not pressed by the school system, social comparisons, or the race of child development. You can see the neurodivergent grandchild without the lens of urgency. You can see them through the lens of eternity. Buddhism teaches about Buddha nature, the enlightened nature in all beings. An autistic child has Buddha nature. A child with ADHD has Buddha nature. They do not need to be fixed to be sacred. They are sacred exactly as they are. You can be the first to recognize and honor that Buddha nature. Marcus Aurelius observed, "In the universe, Asia and Europe are but two small corners. In a family's life, Autism and ADHD are just two different ways of experiencing human existence. They are not flaws in the universal design. They are rich variations of what it means to be human. Jung said, "The greatest tragedy in life is when people do not become who they truly are." For neurodivergent children, this tragedy is more common because they are constantly pressured to mask their true nature to meet social expectation. You can be the guardians who protect their authenticity. Imagine a garden where every flower was the same. Would it be efficient? Perhaps. Beautiful? Never. Beauty comes from diversity. An autistic child who memorizes every dinosaur is not obsessive. They are a specialist in the making. A child with ADHD who changes the subject quickly is not disorganized. They are a multidimensional mind. Epictetus taught, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few needs." A neurodivergent child often has different needs, not greater ones. Less sensory stimulation or more movement or predictable routines. When you meet these needs without judgment, you cultivate emotional wealth. Seneca wrote, "Every day is a step toward eternity." Every day you celebrate a neurodivergent grandchild's differences is a step toward forming a person who loves themselves as they are. Every time you recognize a unique talent, even if it seems strange by social standards, you plant seeds of self-worth that last a lifetime. The difference between cultivating and forcing is fundamental. Forcing is trying to make an orchid grow like a sunflower. Cultivating is creating the conditions where an orchid can bloom as an orchid. You do not need to change your neurodivergent grandchildren. You need to discover what kind of garden they require to reveal their natural beauty. Marcus Aurelius concluded, "Accept the things you cannot change and change the things you can." You cannot change your grandchild's neurodivergent brain, but you can change the environment in which that unique brain will grow. You can be the perfect garden where rare flowers finally have space to bloom. The bridge between generations, healing ancestral wounds. There are wounds that travel through generations like underground rivers. You may not see them, but they are there. The shame of being different, the pressure to fit in, the fear of not being loved unless you are normal. These wounds passed from your parents to you, from you to your children, and now, when a neurodivergent grandchild is born, they resurface with full force. But here lies a sacred opportunity. You can be the generation that stops this toxic inheritance. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Much of what troubles us comes not from events, but from inherited opinions about events." How many of your reactions to your grandchild's autism or ADHD truly come from the present situation? And how many come from inherited opinions about what is normal, acceptable, or shameful in a family? Seneca taught, "All men are slaves to something. Freedom comes from consciously choosing our masters." Were you slaves to the social expectations of your era, to the pressure to have perfect children, to fear of the neighbor's judgment? Now you can consciously choose to be slaves only to unconditional love. Jung spoke of family complexes, unconscious patterns that repeat across generations. The perfect child complex, the don't be any trouble complex, the be a source of pride complex. These become pure poison when they meet a neurodivergent child. You have the power to dissolve these complexes through conscious acceptance. Imagine for a moment your own parents handled your childhood differences the only way they knew how. Perhaps they repressed your creativity because artists have no future. Perhaps they forced social behaviors because shy children suffer in life. Perhaps they denied your sensitivities because boys don't cry. Are those wounds still alive in you? Epictetus, who grew up enslaved, taught, "We cannot control what happened to us, but we can control what we do with those experiences." You could not control how you were raised, but you can control how you will respond to your neurodivergent grandchild. You can break cycles or perpetuate them. Buddhism teaches about family karma, how actions and attitudes perpetuate across generations. Negative karma, rejecting differences, hiding problems, pretending normality. serenity, positive karma, accepting authenticity, celebrating differences, creating safe spaces to be real. Which kind of karma are you creating for the generations to come? Here is the painful truth. Many grandparents initially feel shame about a grandchild's diagnosis, not because something is wrong with the child, but because something unresolved remains in their own stories. The autistic child who doesn't seek hugs awakens memories of the emotional coldness you suffered or caused. The child with ADHD who won't stop resurrects the impatience you received or transmitted. Seneca said, "The cure for pain is not to forget it, but to integrate it." You do not need to forget the wounds of your childhood or your parenting. You need to integrate them consciously so they do not automatically contaminate your relationship with neurodivergent grandchildren. Jung called this family individuation, when an entire family evolves toward healthier patterns through the conscious work of its members. You, grandparents, can be the catalysts of this individuation. You can be the first in your lineage to say, different is not a defect. Neurodivergent is a legitimate and valuable way of being human. Marcus Aurelius observed, "What harms the hive harms the bee." And toxic family patterns harm the entire family, but they are especially devastating for neurodivergent children who already face unique challenges. When you heal these patterns, you are healing not only the present, but the future. The bridge between generations is not built by denying the past, but by transforming it into wisdom. When you tell an autistic grandchild that you too felt strange or out of place, not to traumatize, but to connect, you are building a bridge. When you transform ancestral shame into present acceptance, you are healing entire bloodlines. Epictetus concluded, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." What's happening is that you have a neurodivergent grandchild. How will you react? By repeating ancestral patterns of rejection, or by creating new patterns of radical acceptance? Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." You can bring unconscious family patterns to light and consciously choose a different destiny for your neurodivergent grandchild, one where being different is being celebrated, not hidden. The sage's legacy: what remains when we're gone? There is a question every grandfather and grandmother carries in the heart, though few dare to speak it aloud. What will remain of me when I'm gone? Marcus Aurelius, emperor of the known world, wrote, "Remember that in a short time you and all you know will be dead, and soon after even your names will be forgotten." Harsh words, but liberating ones. If names will be forgotten, what truly remains? The answer lies in the emotional memories you are creating now with your neurodivergent grandchildren. Seneca taught, "It is not death a man should fear, but never beginning to live." You have lived for decades, gathered experiences, built stories. But the crucial question is, what kind of life are you creating for your neurodivergent grandchildren through memory? Memories of acceptance or rejection, of unconditional love or conditional love. Jung spoke of the imago, the parental images we carry for life. Your neurodivergent grandchildren will carry an imago of you for the rest of their lives. What imago will it be? The grandfather ashamed of their autism, or the grandfather who celebrated their unique way of seeing the world? The grandmother who tried to normalize their ADHD, or the grandmother who understood their energy as a different kind of gift? Buddhism teaches impermanence. Everything passes, changes, ends, but some things transcend impermanence, and one of them is the feeling of being loved unconditionally. A neurodivergent child who grows up feeling accepted by you will carry that sense of acceptance like an emotional shield for life. Marcus Aurelius lost several children and knew grief and farewell intimately. He wrote, "Death smiles at us all. All we can do is smile back." You will leave one day, an unnegotiable reality, but the smile you leave in your neurodivergent grandchildren's memory, that smile can last for generations. Epictetus taught, "We cannot avoid death, but we can choose how to live." How are you choosing to live these precious years with neurodivergent grandchildren, fighting their reality, or creating memories of love that needed no explanations or correction. Imagine for a moment your neurodivergent grandchildren as adults, perhaps with children of their own, telling stories about you. What will they say? My grandparents were the only people who understood me. Or, my grandparents also thought I was a problem. That choice is being made now, in every interaction, every look, every reaction. Seneca observed, "Each day we live is a step toward eternity." Every day you spend with an autistic grandchild creating memories of acceptance is a step toward eternalizing the feeling that they are valuable as they are. Every moment you show patience to a child with ADHD is a brick in the construction of self-esteem that will last decades. Jung said, "The greatest tragedy is not death, but a life not lived." For a neurodivergent child, a life not lived is a life spent hiding, apologizing, trying to be someone else. You have the power to prevent that tragedy by creating memories in which they felt free to be authentic. The Stoic legacy is not to leave material riches. It is to leave people emotionally strengthened, not names carved in stone, feelings carved in souls. A neurodivergent child who grows up knowing they were loved without reservation by you becomes an adult, capable of loving themselves the same way. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. The best revenge against a society that rejects neurodivergence is to raise neurodivergent people who love themselves deeply. And that begins with the unconditional love you show now." Epictetus concluded, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." You do not need to explain to an autistic grandchild that they are valuable. You need to embody that truth in every hug or respectful non-hug, every word, every calm presence. You do not need to convince a child with ADHD that their energy is a gift. You need to treat it as one. Seneca left one last wisdom. Life is long if you know how to use it. Do you know how to use these precious years with neurodivergent grandchildren? By creating memories that will be a balm when you are no longer here. By building within them the unshakable certainty that they are worthy of love. What remains when you are gone are not the objects you leave. It is the emotions you planted. Plant acceptance. Plant celebration of difference. Plant unconditional love. These seeds will grow far beyond your life and blossom in future generations. The grandparents' sacred mission. We have reached the end of this journey, but you, grandparents, are just beginning the most important mission of your lives. Today, you discovered that you are not only grandparents of neurodivergent children, you are guardians of a millennia-old philosophy that can transform not only your family, but the future of neurodivergence in the world. You are the last soldiers in a battle few dare to fight, the battle for a world where being different means being valuable. Marcus Aurelius ended his meditations knowing he had planted seeds that would grow far beyond his existence. You have the same sacred opportunity. Every moment of acceptance you show, every word of encouragement you offer, every calm presence you maintain during storms, this is building people who will change the world. Seneca said, "When we leave this life, may we be able to say, 'I have lived.'" You have lived decades, accumulated wisdom, earned the perspective of time. Now you can say with certainty, "I used my life to make other lives stronger. I turned my experience into medicine for others. I was a Stoic grandparent." Jung taught that whoever heals himself heals the world. You have healed ancestral wounds of rejection, integrated the shadows of unmet expectations, and now you offer your neurodivergent grandchildren something you may never have received in your own childhood: love without conditions. Epictetus, who moved from slavery to philosophical freedom, knew that true freedom comes from accepting what we cannot change and transforming what we can. You cannot change your grandchildren's autism or ADHD, but you can completely change how these children will feel about themselves. Buddhism reminds us 1,000 candles can be lit from a single candle, and the life of the candle will not be shortened. You are that original candle. Every neurodivergent child who feels accepted by you becomes a new lit candle, able to illuminate others and carry the light of acceptance across generations. Remember, when an autistic child cannot express affection in conventional ways, you can be the ones who understand that love has 1,000 languages. When a child with ADHD seems impossible to control, you can be the ones who see energy waiting for channels, not problems waiting for solutions. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "What upsets people is not events, but their judgments about events." You have the power to change all family judgments about neurodivergence, from problem to gift, from shame to pride, from tragedy to a unique adventure. Leave here not only as grandparents, leave as Stoic philosophers in action, as compassionate Buddhas in motion, as Jungian archetypes of the protective sage. You are bridges between worlds, between past and future, pain and healing, rejection and total acceptance. Neurodivergence needs you. Your grandchildren need you. The world needs grandparents courageous enough to love without fear, to accept without judgment, to be present without hurry. Be those grandparents. Be that quiet revolution. Be the Stoic sages history will remember as the ones who changed everything simply by loving in the right way. What kind of memory do you want to be in your neurodivergent grandchildren's lives? A memory of struggle or of peace, of judgment or of acceptance? Share in the comments a promise you make to your neurodivergent grandchildren after watching this video. Subscribe to the channel for more content on Stoicism and neurodivergence. And please share this video with other grandparents who need this transformative message. Together, we can raise a generation of neurodivergent children who love themselves deeply.